literally the month I arrived was when September 11 happened. You only live life once. Pursue your passions, pursue your dreams, leave no regrets.
Hey Ming, thank
Hello.
you so much for joining me here in
my
your
pleasure.
hood, right? You grew up around here, is that correct?
Yes, this is a familiar neighborhood.
Yeah, I think like just over the back of my shoulder is
100 meters that way.
the block that you actually grew up in.
Yes.
So you're super familiar with here. What has changed about this area since you were growing up?
What has changed around this area? You can't see around here now, but actually my former primary school is supposed to be, probably the gate was 20 meters that way.
Okay, so this is not this school that we're next to right now.
This is the same exact school, the Fengshan Primary School, the name.
Yeah.
But actually they demolished the old building and rebuilt it.
Nice, very
So,
nice.
but it's still within the same compound, and in fact, my siblings both went to the new compound.
Okay, so you would have grown up playing literally
Yes,
around this
I
area
would
that
have
we're
played
sitting
at
now.
this very void deck at some point.
Yeah.
The playground, 100 meters that way. The kindergarten I attended was there, 100 meters that way too. So this is home ground.
True son of East Coast, I guess you could say.
Thanks. And thanks for bringing the studio here.
No, thank you for making time for this. Let me get right into it. I wanted to ask you about some of your formative years, not in East Coast though, but I understand that you studied overseas in university, in the US and the UK. Can you tell me about those years that you were overseas?
Yeah, so perhaps I'll start by saying I was very grateful to be given a scholarship to study overseas. This was from the SAF.
Yeah.
I think through my secondary school, through JC, I was in part of Scouts. I enjoyed the outdoor lifestyle. And so when I entered BMT, I actually enjoyed the camaraderie, the kind of sense of adventure and the teamwork that was going on in BMT.
Okay.
So I thought joining the armed forces as a career seemed viable.
Yes.
If it gave me an opportunity to go overseas for studies, why not?
Yeah.
And anyway, it's just 4 years of studies and a 6-year contract after that. It's a 10-year decision, and I can always choose to do something else after that. So I took on the scholarship and was grateful to be able to go to the States for 4 years of studies.
Cornell University.
Went to Cornell, upstate New York. And literally the month I arrived was when September 11 happened.
Oh, geez, okay.
So I very quickly could appreciate the sense of mutual support. I remember that fateful morning when I was walking through campus. There were a lot of sobbing individuals. There were a lot of shoulders that everyone was leaning on. The sense of kinship, the sense of just helping out a fellow human being was strong.
Yeah.
And I appreciated that. That is what being a fellow human is about. You may not know the other person, but you all can sense, you all can feel that at a moment of vulnerability, a helping hand was needed, and it's not difficult. So I appreciated that. While I was there, actually, I really enjoyed overseas education, being able to, not just the academics part, but the ability to experience a different culture, different lifestyle, learn a sense of independence, and I think at the same time also appreciate culture and do a little bit of traveling. Frankly, before that, I don't think I've traveled much outside of Southeast Asia. So that was really very, very far to venture off on my own. But as an 18, 19-year-old, that was what I thought would define my next 4 years. So I took it up. When I was there, one of the my most enjoyable experience perhaps was being able to interact with many fellow Singaporeans there. There were more than 100 Singaporeans in Cornell across the 4 years of studies. And at some point, I took on the role. I was appointed I was elected as the president of the Singapore Students Association. So it was quite nice to be able to work with fellow Singaporeans to bring the culture of Singapore, especially Singaporean food, over there to share with.
Were you cooking the food?
We did. All of us, it's kind of like a bit of potluck. So we all cook a little bit, and then I still remember there was a huge hall, and then we will set up the makan night for anyone who drops by to share in our culture. At the same time, also organize activities for all the Singaporeans who are there to come together, network, and reminiscence, think back about what Singapore home felt like. Occasions such as National Day will be an opportunity for us to come together, or even year-end parties, so on and so forth.
Okay, so that was your first time living out of home, I guess, apart from BMT, right?
Yes.
And I mean, you mentioned something like that. It was the month you arrived, September 11 happened. Was it kind of scary being away from...
A little.
you're somewhere comfortable in this place where, I don't know, I guess in that moment the sense of danger was really heightened in New York.
Yeah. So that was the episode that my generation will remember.
Yeah.
September 11th. And I think the fact that something so inconceivable could actually happen in the United States, where at that point in time I thought US would be fairly safe and secure, a very developed country.
Yeah.
Also taught me that perhaps not to take things for granted. It's important to be able to treasure our loved ones. And I remember after that, I paid a bit more attention, spent quite a bit more time calling back home, reassuring that everything is all right.
Yeah.
Because New York is big, but to my folks back home, New York is New York.
Yeah.
Although I was 3 hours away from New York City.
Yeah, I'm sure they must have been like calling you frantically to make sure that you were safe.
Yeah, and there was a period of time whereby the phone lines, the networks were all jammed up because everyone was trying to call everyone.
So, do you remember what that first phone call back home was like right after it happened? I mean, when you had to reassure your parents that you were okay.
It was all right. I think it was first an email.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It wasn't that easy to call us. So it was first an email, and then subsequently when the phone call went through to reassure, I think it was all right.
Yeah.
I think my parents also didn't want to express too much concern.
Okay.
Yeah. Kind of making me worry. Yeah.
I mean, you spoke a bit about your times, the time you spent with Singaporeans there. We all know that PM Wong has his famous story about when he got to his university at Wisconsin and he had a roommate who was like a cowboy and they went busking together. Did you have any, I guess, stories or anecdotes of doing things that are not so typical of Singaporeans when you were overseas? I mean, either in the US or the UK where I think you did a master's.
The customary orientation to any new student over there, because Cornell is based in the upstate New York. There are a lot of gorges and waterfalls, a lot of slopes. So an annual tradition that the students will always do is called Slope Day. Okay. So there's a huge slope that all the students will definitely see when you get oriented to the campus. And what we always do is we will slide down the slope. It's more than 100 meters, easily. And when it comes to winter, we'll do train.
How steep is this slope?
30 degrees, 40 degrees. So in winter, what we'll do, and it snows very heavily there, so we'll take the tray from the dining hall and we'll tray down the slope. Yeah. Sitting on the tray and then we'll slide down the slope. So it's kind of fun.
Yeah. Some treasured memories, I'm sure.
Yes.
Okay, so you mentioned earlier that you were in BMT, you accepted the overseas scholarship.
Yeah.
So then you had to come back to Singapore after your time studying and then back to serving in the army.
Yes.
Yeah, let's move on to talk about your time in the military. I mean, everybody knows that you retired with the rank of Brigadier General, and you were, I believe, I saw in an article, the layman's terms was the second IC of the Defence Force. Is that the right way to describe it?
I think the hierarchy is that the Chief of Defence Force runs the entire SAF.
Yeah.
You'll have the individual service chiefs, your Chief of Army, Chief of Navy, Chief of Air Force, and the Chief of the Digital Intelligence Service. Those will be the next level of pinnacle ranks.
Okay.
And then I'll be the Chief of Staffs. Will be the next layer of deputies that supports the chiefs.
I see. Okay.
So I'm the one that directly supports the CDF.
Yeah.
And I'll coordinate all policy, all matters across the armed forces, across the services, and in domains that will straddle across from HR, logistics, operations, training, plans, budget, security, so on and so forth.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for explaining that for someone as ignorant as me about the military stuff.
It's hard to explain because actually the nature of issues that come through the desk are quite diverse.
Okay.
And at that senior management level, actually we are expected to be able to have a view, an opinion, and to contribute to pretty much everything.
Yeah. Wow, okay. So can you tell me a bit more about your time in the military? What was it like? What were some of your favorite experiences?
Wow. I think 24 years in the military, I think I really grew up, matured, and learned a lot.
Yeah. Did you imagine that you were going to stay there for that long?
Frankly speaking, no.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned earlier, I thought I was just giving it a shot for the first 6 years. And when the 6 years came towards the end, at the end of the 6-year mark was when I was sent to Afghanistan. I went for staff college in the UK to read more in terms of command and staff matters. So I think that helped me to look forward into what was beyond the 6 years.
Okay.
And that brought me into command, commanding a battalion. That brought me into dealing with specialized staff support. So looking into things such as, in my case, I looked into intelligence, as well as I was deployed to Jakarta actually as the army attaché at the embassy over there. Subsequently, I progressed on to hold a brigade command, division command. I had the opportunity to be able to do long-term planning for the SAF, looking into the plans for 2040. I was responsible for managing the SAF's budget, resources, not just in terms of dollars, but also in terms of manpower allocation, in terms of land use as well. And then, of course, subsequently running as Director of Joint Operations, running all operations across the armed forces. And I had the distinct opportunity to be able to organize a few times National Day Parade. And I love National Day Parade. We can talk about that. But I think the key value proposition for the SAF career is that there's never a dull moment. You're constantly being rotated, being exposed to new issues from different domains. For example, I can be dealing with operations one day, and then the next thing can be about security, the next thing can be focusing on training. I can be deployed overseas in Jakarta. I can be in a training institute as a trainer. It's really very varied, and there's never a dull moment. I don't think I've spent more than 2.5 years on any single stint, and it's always a constant journey of learning, relearning, working with new colleagues, new friends, and I enjoyed the journey very, very much. It's high-paced, and in addition to that, it's not just the SF community, but as I mentioned, we get opportunities to deal with, to work with many external stakeholders. I was involved in organizing the opening ceremony for SEA Games 2015. I was involved in the state funeral for our Mr. Mentor Lee Kuan Yew in 2015 as well. National Day parades in 2018, 2022. So it's been a great journey.
Can we zero in a bit about your time in Afghanistan, since you mentioned it? I mean, what was that like? Because I'm sure most people have never been to a place like that before. Or you know, thankfully, you know, we've never experienced anything like that before. What was it like on the ground?
On the ground, it's the brown and dusty place. I remember flying in through. I think we transited through Kuwait, flew into Kandahar directly. Once we got into Kandahar, pretty much everything is military-driven, anchored off the US military structure over there. I flew in on a C-17, if I'm not mistaken, a C-17, which is a huge C-130. Together with many other troops, everyone was packed up, ready to go in for a long deployment. Some of the international forces were there for 3 months, 6 months, or even up to a year. I think most of us did not know what to expect when we were there, because we have all seen pictures, but the experience, the journey will only hit us when we are on the ground. Where I was deployed, I was actually in the regional command based in Kandahar, which is, I guess, the economic capital, but it's also the spiritual capital for the Taliban, which is the terrorist group that we were fighting against.
Now the government.
And now the government, yes. But I think there's some reorientation in terms of their posture today. But I think back then, what we were trying to do is not just fight the insurgency, but at the same time also train up the local security forces, the Afghan National Security Forces, so that they are capable of fighting for themselves. So that was the primary mission. But I think the other mission was also to make sure that we portray Singapore as a responsible member of the international community, to be able to contribute where we can towards international efforts, fly our flag high. And I guess at the same time, also be able to draw useful operational lessons that can be taken back so that we can improve our internal processes back home. We don't want to fight wars, but where we have the opportunity to deploy and learn, we'll learn as much as we can. So we did all that.
I read that you mentioned that there were times when the camp that you're in or the base that you're in were shelled, right? So there was quite a bit of risk when I was there. And you were just married, is that correct? You just married just before you left?
Yes. So I got married in 2009 and went for a honeymoon, and I came back soon after. and I was asked whether I was prepared to go for this ops deployment.
After you came back from your
Literally,
honeymoon.
I think one week after coming back from a honeymoon leave was when I was asked to, are you ready to go?
Yeah, you got really good sense of timing. The 9/11 thing, and now right after your honeymoon being deployed
I'm
to
not sure whether that's a
Afghanistan.
good thing.
Okay.
But, so I was asked, and
Can you say no to something like that?
I would not say no. I think for every single military professional, I think being able to deploy to an operational setting is a test of commitment.
Yeah, that's what you train for, right?
Yes, that's what we train for. A test of commitment, a test of competency, to
Okay.
really validate whether we are good enough to benchmark.
Yeah.
And that was an opportunity that military professionals will not give up on, and definitely I was keen to go. It's the question of how do I answer the home side?
Yes.
To tell my wife that that's really something I want to do.
Yeah.
I think this is what I've been training so hard for. I want to do this. But I know I have responsibilities. I need to make sure the home front is settled.
Yeah.
So I asked the senior officer who was asking me then, can I give me 1 to 2 months, let me sort out the home side, and then I'm ready to go for pre-deployment training, and then I'll be good to go.
You need to speak to the senior officer at home to get clearance for that.
The
right?
most senior officer at home.
So what was that conversation like, if you don't
Yeah.
mind sharing? I mean, with your wife, it must have been difficult.
Yes. So I think for my wife, I think I'm very fortunate.
Yes.
So I've known my wife for a very long time.
Primary school
She was-
sweetheart.
oh yeah, you know my background.
Yes, yeah, I did a bit of research.
So she was my primary school classmate.
Yeah.
In this very primary school. For,
Okay.
Upper primary. We lost contact in secondary school. We reconnected in JC, and I courted her in JC1, JC2, and then we got together at JC2. We survived the long distance relationship.
When you were
Subsequently got married.
studying
Yeah.
overseas, right?
So we knew each other very well, and she's always been very supportive. She knew what it took to be a army wife, I suppose.
Yeah.
And so when I broached the topic, she knew that actually that's something I really wanted to do.
Okay.
So she supported that. So it wasn't that difficult. Maybe she didn't fully express it then, but of course it's always difficult to say that I was going to go away soon after we got married.
Yeah.
But she was supportive.
Yeah,
For
yeah.
those 6-7 months.
So how many phone calls can you make? Is there like a limited amount of time, or is it just every night, you can be on the phone back home?
I don't think there was a restriction, but we were more constrained by satellite connection.
Okay,
And back
yeah.
in 2010, 2011, actually the sat phones weren't really working that well. We have to know where exactly within the base we have to go to get optimal reception based on time of the day, depending on where the satellites were.
Yeah.
So we have to constantly roam around then, yeah.
Okay.
But I think in the early first 1 to 2 months, I probably called back at least once every other day, every three days or so.
Yeah.
But as I stayed on for longer, work intensified, I took on additional roles. I started actually as just a planning officer, and then I subsequently got promoted on the job.
Okay.
I started leading a group of American officers as the lead planner.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So it was quite an honor for an international officer to be given the trust to lead a group of fellow officers,
Yeah.
many of them Americans. And subsequently, I got busier, so I think the phone calls got a little bit more sparse. But I think my wife got more comfortable that I was there and things were all right.
Yeah, yeah.
So it worked out pretty well.
Yeah, you mentioned the risk earlier. Was
so-
there ever a time where you
yeah,
came
there
close
were.
to being to?
So where we were in the base is pretty big, but every day, multiple times a day, sometimes the siren will go off. We'll have seconds to go take cover. If we had time, we'll run to a concrete shelter, but most of the time it's just under a wooden desk, or we'll just lay flat and make sure we minimize surface exposure.
Okay.
We were housed in the metal containers or wooden sheds, so any projectile that will fly in will come through.
Yes.
So there has been instances whereby the rounds do fly in, and then there have been casualties.
Yeah.
The closest I was in was when there was a time the projectile came within 20-30 meters from our accommodation.
Okay.
But luckily I was in the office that day. But
Yeah.
if I had chosen to go back that afternoon, and sometimes we do go back for the afternoon during the lunch break,
Yeah.
I may have been caught. Another time where there was a close call would have been when I was flying out of base, and we do make those trips out because we are supporting the local security forces. We interact with the security forces out in their bases.
Yeah.
And when we fly out or we travel out, we'll see the local kids. There'll be IED attacks potentially.
Yeah.
I've heard many stories of those to the peers, the friends around me, but thankfully I've never been actually involved in one IED attack.
Okay.
Although there was one time, almost came close, but we avoided that. We avoided that one incident. It was a detail that we could have been involved in traveling, but it was called off.
Oh, geez. Okay.
There was a helicopter flight, a Chinook flight, where we were flying out to another base. We normally want to fly high, but we were flying really low at one time, and we were all very puzzled because flying low subjects us to surface attacks, RPGs,
anti-aircraft.
There were many bad things can happen. So we always are on the alert once we leave, and we're always locked and loaded, armed. So that when we were flying low, and it was because of a helicopter malfunction, we started smelling smoke. So we were all locked and loaded, ready to, if we had to crash land, ready to fight our way through if we needed to. But we managed to struggle, and the helicopter started to where it needed to land, and I think we swapped out the helicopter and we were all right. There were a few close calls. The training kicked in, the instincts kicked in. We were all heightened alert, but generally all right. But I think the sense of risk and danger never left us throughout the 6-7 months. We were always ready to respond. And the frequent, we call it a ramp ceremony at the local airbase where the fallen soldiers will be shipped through, repatriated back to their home country. Attended many of those ceremonies, and it's a constant reminder for us to be vigilant, not take things for granted, treasure our loved ones, and remember that every individual is more than just a soldier.
Yeah, that's got to do something to your worldview, your perspective, experiencing that, seeing that.
So it reinforced the notion that life can be fragile, to appreciate our loved ones, not take things for granted. If you have an opportunity to say, I love you to your wife, you have a chance to have another dinner with your parents, hug your kid again, do all that. And also perhaps some of those, sometimes in the thick of things, we get busy with our chase for perhaps the next business deal, for example. The corporate climb, that fight can be a tussle, but sometimes there are more important things in life. And that balance is important. And actually life can be very simple. It can be very rewarding even when it's very simple. So treasure those things.
Very nicely put. There's one other thing I wanted to ask you about your time in the military. I've read that you gave tuition when you were a PC to your men.
Yes.
What was that like? How did that even begin?
So this was during my platoon command tour. Typically in the 2 years, the highlight of the 2 years is a military evaluation exercise. You call it ATEC. Army Training Evaluation Center exercise. During that mono intake, that term of the 2 years, that battalion, we finished the evaluation at a 1.5 year mark. So we had a good 4-5 months before the soldiers would ORD. And it was, what should we do in those few months? And it's like, let's not waste time, right? And back then, actually, the profile of our soldiers, a number of them did not finish N-levels. Some of them dropped out from IT, and therefore, it was a good opportunity for them. And I know they were thinking about restarting academics, but after a year, 2 years of not touching any books at all, that inertia can be challenging. So we asked around whether any of them was keen, and I think a small number of them were quite keen. So I started doing math in the recreation room of the building. I still remember that room.
Math is your best subject?
I liked it. So do a bit of math, also some English, but it's not so much the teaching, but it's more the encouragement and setting up the platform for them to feel that, hey, actually I can do this. So what's it like when they answer a question wrong? Do you get them to knock it down? No lah.
Give 10?
Actually, at the end of the day, it's for their own exams at the end of the day. It's more to make sure that they felt encouraged and motivated to start, because they are not going to finish in those few months. The exam is quite some time away. So it's just to get started again.
Do you ever keep in touch with any of those guys? Do you know?
They've MR'd since. I think this was probably 1 to 2 years ago. I think I still have the photo of that. This was during COVID. I think one of them reminded me, in fact, I had forgotten about this. One of them reminded me that I gave him tuition.
Okay.
So one of them, Neil.
Yeah.
Neil, yeah.
Before we move on from the military stuff, I feel like I have to ask this question. There's a certain stereotype of people who come from the military and go straight into politics, go straight into governance. The terms used, parachutists, paper generals, things like that. What do you make of that stereotype?
Naturally, the military is an organization that is built based on hierarchy. There's a certain rank structure to it, so there's no denying that. And to a certain extent, that is useful to help certain things work in the military.
Yeah.
When it comes to training, when it comes to operations, you do need that sense of regimentation and discipline. But there are also many aspects, many things that we do within the military, whereby you do need a more consultative approach, a team-based leadership, and especially as I get more and more senior through the structure, through the ranks, recognize that no one can be the true expert in the domain. There are many specialists amongst the staff, amongst us, who will be the expert in their own domain, and they can advise very, essentially they're the best that should be consulted before any decision is made, and that kind of go around the room, everyone speak your inputs to a certain position before the collective decision is made by the chairman or the leader in the room. I think that process is important. And of course, having gone through many National Day parades, organizing committees, especially in 2022, being able to lead executive committee comprising not just entities from the government, not just from the SAF, not just from the government, but even from private organizations, some of the social volunteer organizations as well, and they are part of the committee. It's important to consult widely, hear all the different perspectives and views, and I've gotten very comfortable to working in that kind of environment. And I think that consultative approach lends itself to a much better outcome, a more sustainable outcome actually, because there's a lot more buy-in, and you try to find the optimal win-win solution. And even if you can't land on a win-win, people understand what are the different considerations from different parties, and it's about trading off and helping people understand why certain things are being done. And even back in the military, that process, as I go along, I think is important because it's about trust building. It's about helping people understand why decisions are made in a certain way. And there may be times where there is no time to share the rationale behind, and that's where the trust built over time is actually important. But having said so, I'm not new to being considered now for politics, going out there and being able to, I guess, represent the people or doing community work. I'm not new to it. I spent the last 17 years doing a lot of grassroots community service, working with the community, working with many members of the public, residents, neighbours. And the nature of working in a community-based organisation is that it is consultative. Everyone sees they are part of the neighbourhood, of the community, of the block. They all have different perspectives, and it's important to meld all of those perspectives so that they know what's going on, they have their airtime, they know why things are being done in a certain way, and they're able to bring those perspectives back to their neighbours, their community. And I have come to be very comfortable working in that kind of environment. So I switch hats. I do have some friends who are from the military who come in and see me in a community setting and see me operate in a fairly different way, and they're like, hey, this is a very different person from the one I see in a uniform. I switch hats quite easily, I think.
Okay, before I forget, there's actually one last thing that we need to talk about, which is your involvement in NDP, right? Can you tell me about that? That's a big thing that many Singaporeans look forward to every single year.
Yes. So it's always a privilege to be involved in organising the birthday party for the country.
Yes.
And providing a platform for Singaporeans to all come together and celebrate. The sight of being able to see thousands, tens of thousands of Singaporeans gather at the celebration site, or even, so the 2 times I've done it, around the floating platform, around the entire Marina Bay area, and seeing so many Singaporeans participate is always a joy and a sense of pride. So 2022, I was privileged to be asked to lead the organising committee for the National Day. This was the first full-scale National Day post-COVID. In fact, it was the first full-scale national event post-COVID. And National Day parades take more than a year, in fact, to prepare and organise. So I was starting to get prepared, thinking about what exactly I wanted to do by, say, June of 2021. And imagine back in June 2021, I was looking at, in 2020, the National Day celebration was about 150 pax in the Star Theatre. And of course, in 2021, it was the first time in our history that the National Day parade, the actual celebration, took place not on 9 August. So there was a lot of uncertainty, and we had to be ready for all kinds of contingencies for what was to come in 2022. There were still a lot of different variants of the virus. I was very glad to involve my NS men. I was also glad to involve many of our partners, People's Association, and even some of the other volunteer organizations, youth groups, to come in and help with the organization of Heartland celebrations. We had 5 huge sites. We involved 150,000 more Singaporeans easily over that weekend. And it was very heartening to see Singaporeans come out and celebrate with confidence, not just because it's National Day, but because they were confident that the future is bright and that we're prepared to come together as one people again. It's almost like a little bit of a mark of resilience and a shout out that I'm ready.
Yeah. Do you get to decide about the fireworks?
In terms of
how much say do you have?
How much
I
definitely have a say in terms of how much fireworks I have at the floating platform.
Okay.
At the Heartland sites, we left it to the respective organising committees.
Okay. Yeah, because the fireworks, I feel like, is the one that always pleases the crowd, no matter what. Everybody always looks forward to the fireworks.
It's the show win.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, do you reserve like 20-30% of your budget just to make sure that you have loads of fireworks to?
We reserve enough.
Okay, let's move on to speak about your time in politics, or it's a fresh new chapter for you. What's it like when you got that call asking you to run?
Of course, I was a little surprised at the start,
okay.
Because I had a perfectly good career in the armed forces going for me. At the same time, if I take a step back, if the call came and there was a need for me to put myself forward, and I look at my career, my track record thus far, having done a lot in the armed forces, public service, working as part of the government as well as serving in the community. 24 years there in the armed forces, 17 years through the community. Actually, that's pretty much my entire adulthood. A lot of time has been dedicated to serving country and people, and therefore it will be a natural extension as a next step to embrace a bigger platform, a larger platform. Hopefully, more influence will shape more policies, be able to make a difference to even more families, more people, more communities. And I think the experience will put me in a good position to be able to do all of that. So I thought it would be a natural extension to take the step forward. But of course, there are considerations such as what the trade-offs I may need to make, sacrifices, be in terms of family time. But of course, there's always the little bit of, am I good enough? Is someone else actually more capable of doing this than me, and maybe I should let that someone else do it? So there's always that little bit of self-doubt. But I thought if someone trusts that I may be able to do this job, I'll give it my best and not look back.
Are you allowed to say who was the one who brought you out to tea?
It started with SMS Tanket Hao, who asked me whether I was keen.
Okay.
Subsequently, it was through Mr. Chan Chun Sing who broached it further.
Yeah. And I'm sure, as you mentioned, one of the considerations is family time, so you have to clear it with your senior officer at home once again.
Yes.
What was a harder conversation, when you had to go to Afghanistan or when you now have to join politics?
I think Afghanistan was harder, actually.
Okay.
Because we really just got married. This time round, the circumstances are a little bit different. We now have 3 kids, 3 young kids. So it's more about...
What are the ages? Sorry if you don't mind me asking.
The youngest is 4, the oldest is 10.
Okay.
So they're really very young, very formative stage, and probably require a little bit of parent supervision at home. And I'm actually quite involved in their parenting, actually. I do a lot of the chauffeuring duties, I do a bit of the teaching and the nagging, do the spelling, that kind of thing at home. So it may be a gap that going forward I'll need my wife to help to fill. But having been married for so long, I know that she was prepared to go for the journey with me as long as I've made the decision. She was willing to back me up. In fact, over the last 10 years, she's quit her job twice to join me in my respective adventures. Very, very grateful for that.
Yeah.
Very, very appreciative. It's not easy because each time she quit, she had to come back, rejoin the industry, recertify herself.
Yeah.
It's not easy. So thank you to her. And this time round, I'm not sure whether it's temporal or whether it's going to be for the long haul. Therefore, the sacrifice is real. But I had confidence that I'll have her support if I am sure this is what I'm in for. So it was a conversation we had. I think it's more around the kids in terms of how the kids respond,
Okay.
when and how I should break it to the kids.
Yeah.
So I first had a conversation with my wife months ago, but we only told the children sometime middle of March, during the March school holidays.
Yeah.
I went on a trip. I thought that was the correct juncture to let them know.
Okay.
I think the eldest, 10, he's been reading the papers. He knew that
Reading the
election
papers.
talk,
Wow. Okay.
he does read some. I think the schools do a good job nowadays in
Yeah,
terms of
that's
exposing
incredible.
them to current affairs.
Mothership. I hope they're reading a bit of that.
Yes, that too. So he was aware that election was coming, so he could connect
Okay.
and said, yeah, okay, sure, you'll be doing that. Does that mean you'll not be home very much going forward? Does
Yeah.
it mean you'll be even busier than you have been before? Does that mean that we won't be able to go for National Day celebrations like we used to? Because being armed forces, I've had an active role to play in shaping many of the National Day celebrations.
Yeah.
And I always try to bring them along because actually my son is very involved in NDP.
Okay.
He knows his stuff.
He loves the fireworks too.
Yeah. So I appreciate the external perspectives in terms of how external party will see and
Yeah.
appreciate the celebrations. So he has been involved. So he asked, does it mean I'll be out of it this year? So I did tell him that there will be significant change going forward, but I'll do my best. I'm still a daddy. I'll still be around.
How did they take to that?
I suppose he's all right. I think we will readjust when I get into that new role.
Yeah.
If I get into that
If
new
you
role.
get into the new role.
Yeah.
Okay, we have some questions from the audience
Sure.
about advice, but before we get to that, one last question about the politics thing. I mean, imagine that you do get elected, and I don't know, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years from now, it's finally time for you to step down from your role in politics. What do you hope the legacy you leave behind
I see.
as
I
a
see.
politician is?
In 20, 30 years, this is SG 60, if we stretch it
Yes.
forward to SG 100, for example,
Okay.
right? I think some fundamentals don't change. I hope that Singapore remains a country, a nation that is strong and free, cliche as it sounds.
Yeah.
But I think that's important, especially given the current context where you see the two wars going on,
Yeah.
intensifying trade tariffs. And I think this may just be the start of a lot more uncertainty and choppier waters in the years to come.
Yeah.
I hope we remain strong, we remain free, we remain being able to have a seat at the table and being able to speak and fight for our own core interests.
Yeah.
Economically, security-wise, I think Singapore needs to make sure we are ready for the future.
What do you think your contribution to that will be?
I think having come from the armed forces,
Yes.
from the government, I think I have a good sense in terms of security and defense. I have a good exposure given my role in terms of interacting with many regional and international partners.
Yeah.
A sense of international relations and geopolitics.
Yeah.
I think I'm quite sensitized to those considerations, so I can contribute in that. My community service background will give me that exposure to community and youth, social and family affairs.
Yes.
I think I do have some perspectives on those issues, so I think I can contribute my perspectives on those. Economics, I will concede, is something that I will want to work quite hard to ramp up on.
Yes.
But even within a community, I'll have touch base with SMEs, our hawkers, our merchants, understand some of the challenges, especially through COVID.
Okay.
Many of them had some challenges, and I appreciate the difficulties, and I think I will be able to speak for them and understand their challenges going forward. So that's one thing on the national front. But for society, I think important, given uncertainty, for society to stay cohesive, stay united, be one community whereby people can understand one another and appreciate our differences. And I think sometimes our differences are what make us stronger. And then third, on the people front, although we want to continue to be strong, we want to be competitive economically, we want to continue to be a bright star in the international domain, in the regional domain, but home, domestically, I hope we stay kind, we stay friendly, and we have a lot of love amongst our people. I think it's important to continue to take good care of one another within the community, and especially as our population, there's some aging amongst the population. I think it's important for us to all the more be a lot more supportive of the people around us.
Very well put. Thank you so much for that. I know your time is really precious, and can I squeeze you for a quick advice to one of our viewers?
Sure.
Okay, there is a cue card actually underneath your desk.
There's a secret under the table.
Yes. I don't know if you can see it. Okay. Maybe we can do... why don't we do advice question 1? I think that is somewhat similar to... Maybe you might have experience with that. But before Pei Ming answers your question, if you are viewing this at home, if you have a decision that weighs heavily on your chest, if you want some advice for anything at all, big or small, you can write to us at the link that is on your screen right now. That you can find that exact same link in our show description, and who knows, you might get someone with as much life experience as Pei Ming to answer your question. Okay, the first one from someone named Lost Chance. Would you mind reading the question for us?
Lost Chance says, he or she has applied for internal rotation and the job scope is not what he or she enjoys doing. However, if he or she has stayed in the previous department, he would have had a chance to be promoted, but kind of threw it away by opting for the rotation. Unsure of the career trajectory, feeling very lost, been thinking to resign, but I need the money. So I think this seems like a very big decision.
Yeah.
I think all of us come with different experiences. I don't profess to be able to give career advice, so this is just my humble opinion.
Yes, of course.
I think depends on your personal circumstances, your age, and what you want to pursue in life. But my personal orientation and perhaps taking a leave from me having quit a perfectly good job, venturing into the unknown now, I would imagine if you think you can make a difference, if you think it's something that's meaningful, it enriches you when you go home, at the end of the day, you'll feel that this is something that was worth doing. It may be difficult. Some things are not easy. Sometimes the important things that are worth doing are not easy to do. But you know that it's worth doing. At the end of the journey, you know that you have tried your best. You have no regrets. You only live life once. Go for it. Give it a shot. But of course, I think there are some responsibilities I still have to juggle. Make sure that if you have kids, financial instability, I think there's a little bit of that housekeeping that needs to be stitched up. But in general, I would say go for it. You only live life once. Pursue your passions, pursue your dreams, leave no regrets.
Yes. And always clear it with the senior officer at home first before you do it.
If you have one.
Yes, if you have one. Thank you so much, Pei Ming, for your time. I really appreciate it. I think that's all the time that we have.
Okay.
Thank you guys for watching this episode. Thank you to Audio Technica for powering the audio for this podcast. We'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye.
Bye-bye.